I wanted to follow up on my video from Friday, the one about Professor Emily Oster and the countless others like her who, thank God, now appear to be struggling with a deep sense of embarrassment over how they mistreated those of us that chose to defy the narrative and mandated protocols. Now, while there will be some of you out there that will doubt her sincerity, fair enough, I, however, don't believe she would have been as forthcoming about her ridiculous hand signals and the impact of her paranoia both on her and her son if she didn't have some sense of remorse about her actions. Reading her words, I'm left with the sense that Oster has now finally come around and recognized that she was wrong. And I'll repeat what I said on Friday. Even though I know some of you may disagree with me, Oster's correct on one front. And let me flesh this one out a bit. We do need amnesty, peace, a truce, whatever you want to call it, with folks like her. Why? Because without it, we cannot assemble the overwhelming majority that we will need to bring reckoning and accountability to the smaller group of deplorables, those masterminds and cheerleaders of this vile campaign that sought out to destroy all of us and acted with disdain towards anyone who resisted, even though they had every right to do so. The list of these real deplorables includes not just the usual suspects, such as the pharma sociopaths like Borrella, but also the malevolent tyrants at the top, like our very own Trudeau, Dr. Tam, provincial health officers such as Dr. Bonnie Henry. South of us, we have Fauci, Collins, Walensky, the list goes on and on. Of course, I would be remiss if I also didn't give honorable mentions on this list to the local doctors and pseudoscientists who sold out to Big Brother, Big Pharma, and Big Government by mindlessly parroting whatever they were told to say. This resulted in many of them being closed-minded, which meant they didn't do any independent research or due diligence of their own. Had they done this, they would have definitely been left with far more questions than answers, which would have ultimately not only benefited their patients, but their integrity as well. I'm of the mind that the immense controversy over Oster's op-ed does have a silver lining. First off, it affords a lot of folks the opportunity to vent, and that's healthy. Second, given the response to COVID was global, it only makes sense that this conversation is global as well. As I said at the outset, we're going to need a ton of folks to get on board Team Reality. This won't happen until we welcome them with open arms and come to terms with the fact that many of them are victims in some way, shape, or form as well. I'll unpack that in a minute. Just remember the old adage, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I know for some of you, this will be a bridge too far. I get it. But remember, these authoritarian bastards only prevailed because they divided us. This allowed them to win the battle. But if we unite, given there's far more of us than them, we'll win the war for our freedom and, more importantly, our autonomy. For that, I can extend an olive branch. Now, I'm sure many of you will recall the term mass formation psychosis. It was touted about at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, and put forth by Matthias Desmet, and really brought to the forefront by Dr. Robert Malone. In summary, Matthias put it this way. He said, realize that this form of mass hypnosis of the madness of crowds can account for the strange phenomena of about 20 to 30% of the population in the Western world becoming entranced with the noble lies and dominant narrative concerning the safety and effectiveness of the genetic vaccines, and both propagated and enforced by politicians, science bureaucrats, pharmaceutical companies, and legacy media. So that was his summary of it. Since its introduction into the conversation, there have been attempts at refuting it. To date, the most lucid refutation is that compliant people sensed, perhaps unconsciously, rightly or wrongly, the danger posed by an out-of-control government and rationally went along with the program to avoid becoming targets themselves. Basically, they behaved as the main character of Martin Niemöller's famous poem did, first they came for the communists. Simply put, rightly or wrongly, they were even more terrified of what the government could do to them than of what the virus could do to them. So much so that they willingly lined up to be injected with a highly questionable, untested, as we've learned recently, pharmaceutical intervention without being offered any semblance of informed consent. Now, many of them are beginning to have buyer's remorse, but will have to live with the consequences of their decisions for years to come. Now, for me, it's a toss-up as to which of these two theories explain the past 2.5 years best: mass formation or rational self-interest. That's not to say it couldn't be a mix of both, but even if that's the case, based on the conversations I've had with those that went along, I would say the primary driver for them was motivated by rational self-interest, even though to those of us on this side, the decision seems far from rational. What's this self-interest? I believe it varies by individual. For some, it could be the preservation of safety. For others, it's about health, and for others, lifestyle and or social standing. Given I'm not a psychologist, it's the best I got in terms of the why. Supposing I'm right and we apply it to Oster, her initial maternal instinct was to protect her family from what she perceived was a powerful and unaccountable authority which could only be done by cooperating. Later, her instinct shifted as she concluded that resisting the narrative protected her family far better than continuing to comply. If I had to speculate, all the recent revelations with respect to the safety and effectiveness of the pharmaceutical intervention now posed a greater threat than that of the state. In closing, yes, some of us recognize the real danger far earlier than Oster and wish that folks like Oster had as well. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Doesn't really matter now. Today, we need as many people as possible to wake up, board team reality. Our own very rational self-interest demands it. Just think about it. That's all I'm asking. Anyway, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Please post any comments you have in the comment section. If you're a new subscriber, check out my other videos. If you haven't subscribed, what you waiting for? Get on board Team Reality. See you next time.